hunting,
fishing,
cooking,
camping,
conservation,
travel,
gardening,
photography, family.
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 This
This is the Outdoor Rules Podcast.
All right, welcome to the podcast, everybody. This week we're going to depart from your regularly scheduled podcast and do something a little different. This is Mark, and this week was Mike's birthday. He turned 45, and so I thought it'd be interesting to sit down and actually ask him some questions for a change, get some of his insights on growing up as the middle brother and what got him into the outdoors, you know, his formative memories of hunting and fishing, and then go down the rabbit holes of how he ended up in the outdoor field, you know, working in the science field, and some other things he got to do in his life. So, hi, Mike.
I'm a little nervous about this, Mark.
As you should be. As you should be.
Every time I have Tim on, he's like, what are we going to talk about? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I need a plan. And I'm like, Tim, you talk to people all day. Like that's what he does professionally, is talk to people. And he's like, yeah, but I'm in control. So I'm empathizing with Tim right now.
Anyone who knows you would know that you not being in control is an issue for you. So
yeah, well,
that tracks.
That's a fair point. I don't know if it's a criticism. I suppose it is, but it's fair.
So I guess my first question is going to be, turning halfway to 90.
Oh man.
What, any reflection on that this week? You know, thinking about, I mean, it's just another birthday really in the end, but we're not stopping the marching of time. But do you have any insights, anything you want to share with us over the last couple days?
I don't know. It did strike me this week. Uncle Dick's birthday is coming up here in a week or two, his 90th. And that means I'm half as old as Uncle Dick. And it would be amazing to be fortunate enough to be blessed with a life that long. But yeah, having him on the podcast has kind of made me think a little bit about all that time that he's been around, and how amazing it is. I like always tell people, my grandpa and his brothers grew up farming with horses, and by the time they were middle-aged, we had put a man on the moon, and now Uncle Dick and Uncle Sim are still around, and we're all walking around with more technology in our pockets than really you can even comprehend at this point. And so to think about in a lifetime how much change they saw and how striking that is to me. But for some reason, I don't know that I feel the same way, like all that much has changed in my life, but I guess it must have. And yeah, I don't know. I think that as I've gotten into the middle of middle age, is 45 the middle of middle age, Mark?
I would say yes.
You're not even 40 yet, so you're not even you don't even quite feel like you're middle aged yet. And I'm 45, and I feel like I'm in the middle of it. No, I think that maybe it's getting older, maybe it's the boys, because my kids are still young, but I don't know. I feel like in the last couple of years, I've just gained so much more perspective on what's important. And I'm trying to hone that perspective and to really be grateful for how amazing the first 44 years of my life has been. And, this position that I'm in where, I just have such an amazing family, and I mean, obviously my siblings and our folks and our extended family there in Pennsylvania. And then Caitlin's family has, adopted me wholeheartedly, and all these really wonderful friends and connections that I've made over the years. And some of those things I think we'll touch on probably today. And a fulfilling career, and it's so far from being financially wealthy, but at the same time having the resources to pursue this stuff that I'm passionate about, hunting and fishing and doing it with family and getting to travel and having the time to do this podcast. So I don't know. I'm like everybody. There are times when I think it gets a little overwhelming, everything with life and work and money and all the other stuff. But really trying at this point in my life to focus on realizing just how fortunate I am and how optimistic I am about what's left, whether it's a long time or a short time. I think I got some good stuff ahead.
I think that kids can offer you such, most people are parents, but the kids offer you such a change in perspective on, for me at least, being optimistic for the future and looking forward to what's to come. I know we both had both of our children. My daughter and your two boys are relatively around the same age. You obviously had your kids a little older than I did, but they are such a joy to watch grow and be optimistic for what's to come. Yeah,
I agree. Maybe that's one of those things to talk about technology. It's really been fun. I mean, we really have, you and I think especially, have been communicating more since we started doing this Outdoor Rules thing, and it's really been fun. CJ has connected with my boys in a way that they weren't doing before, and judge it or whatever, but a couple of times a week they play Xbox together, CJ and Robert Minecraft, and now both the boys and CJ sometimes play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is hilarious because it's a throwback to our childhood. But they don't have the opportunity to be together all the time. But that piece of technology is something that I think is making them a little closer, and that's nice to see. Yeah, for sure. Mom and Dad were just out with you for a week and a half or whatever, 2 weeks, and they came back and they said they were just so happy watching those two play online, how much joy it brought them. Because to your point, I mean, otherwise, what would they? If you have a cousin that lived across the country 20 years ago, you talk to them on the phone every once in a while. You see them maybe once a year if you're lucky. Right? They get to communicate 2 or 3 times a week, which is fun. So, yep, for sure. So, shifting gears here a little bit. So you were the middle brother, the second oldest, and to Matt, what are your earliest memories of being of being in the outdoors? Oh man, I would have to say there's like a couple things that stand out. Cherry Stone Campground in Virginia, which is close to where you guys, it's a place that Mom and Dad, near Cape Charles, where Mom and Dad went when we were really young, before you came around, and they kind of stopped going to that area and then went back. I have some really early memories from Cherry Stone of being out on the dock there crabbing with Pop Grant. But it's a little bit like Matt says, like it's just something that was really always there and always present. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to come up with early, like specific, like, oh, I remember catching my first fish, or I remember this, or I remember that. But certainly from just a general outdoor standpoint, being at that campground, camping with Mom and Dad, having a campfire, being able to go out on the dock right there and fish and crab. That's definitely one of them. And then some travel stuff. I was pretty young because, again, you weren't born yet when Mom and Dad loaded up with both the grandpas, and we drove all the way up to Newfoundland in that small RV and stopped throughout New England and the maritime provinces of Canada and did various things. So I don't know, really early on, I would definitely say that stuff. And then I was really fortunate from a hunting standpoint because Pop Grant was still around when I started hunting, and I got lucky and I got a doe at deer camp the first year that I hunted when I was 12, and it was in a deer drive, and Pop Grant was there. I mean, he wasn't standing right there when I got the deer, but some other family was, and then Dad and Pop Grant and just a whole bunch of people ended up being there. And that sense of everybody being so happy for me to have had that experience and happy to have been part of it themselves, I think that was really, really formative for me, in terms of not just that I like to hunt, but that I really like the social and the family aspect of it.
Yeah, the community around it.
Yes. Yeah, because not all of those people that were there were blood relation family, but a lot of them feel that way, even though they weren't actually blood relations. They're people that you're so close to that it feels that way. And so it very much is community beyond just immediate family.
Yeah. The deer camp culture is one of, like, to your point, is especially with the deer driving, stuff like that. It's a group win. It always felt like to me when one person shot a deer in a deer drive, everybody had a part in it, and it felt good to be connected to that.
Right.
So being the middle brother, I mean, what do you ever think, oh, man, being the middle was so bad, or I really wish I would have been the youngest brother or the youngest sibling? People think the baby gets away with everything, and sometimes we do, I guess. Do you look back fondly on that?
I think that there were moments in my childhood where I really keenly felt jealous, maybe for lack of a better word, of you or Matt or Kate for attention from one person or another, feeling one way or another. But, one, that was probably unfair and probably more sibling rivalry related than anything else. And looking back, with my perspective as an adult, my answer would be no, absolutely not. I wouldn't trade the childhood that I had with anybody, including you guys. I think being the middle child maybe gave me some things, or maybe it didn't. Maybe it's just parts of my personality. But I don't have any resentment about being the middle kid. It's just, almost a little bit of a joke to me now. But no, I was so fortunate to have the childhood I had. And, I think that there were people around. I think particularly Pop Bud kind of took me under his wing a little bit more maybe than he did with Matt. Because Matt was Grant, the fourth, right? 4. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think maybe Pop Bud showed me a little more attention than he did to Matt. So no, I think being the middle kid was a good thing for me.
Yeah. It's, it's life. You're dealt the cards you're dealt. So it's interesting. There's times where, of course, for me, I looked up to you guys so much and felt, I wish I would have been able to be closer in age at times. You guys were out of the house long before I was really, really into hunting and stuff like that. But you guys still brought me along and helped shape me into the hunter that I am today.
Yeah. And that was I think having a younger brother, we're 6 years apart. I think that really gave me something too, in terms of an opportunity to help be part of your mentor group, right? And that is something that I feel like I've carried with me in terms of I really like to take new hunters or anglers. I really like to take new people out and introduce them to things. And I think that's probably something that our relationship gave me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, then I also think being the middle kid, like, maybe sometimes there is that, like, you got to work a little harder to be noticed. I don't know if that's true or not. It's probably overblown, but I mean, I certainly, whether I was born with it or whether it grew out of that, I mean, I have a personality that is sometimes dominated by a sheer force of will. I am sort of always willing, or somewhere along the way, I learned to be willing to look at things that I wanted and really drive hard after them. And so I think that might be something that birth order gave me.
Yeah, I'm sure there was that competition as a toddler, competing with Matt for the last piece of cake or dessert at the dinner table, or whatever.
Yeah, you're right. You just, I have a sense or a perspective that if you want things, you got to be the one that goes and gets them. Yeah. You know what I mean? And this podcast is a good example. I mean, you and Matt and others have worked really hard, but this is one of those things like, well, if we want to do a podcast, we talked about it for a long time. If we want to do this, nobody's going to do it for us, right? So we got to buy a microphone and we got to just start doing it.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk about how you got out west, but first I want to know, Mom had always said that from a very young age, you said, I'm going to live in Montana someday, or out west. Do you know, like, at what age do you remember that being a dream? And
I have absolutely no idea.
Interesting.
Where that came from. Like, why that was the thing with me. And I've heard Mom say that 100 times, and I've thought about it. I mean, the closest I can come is that I loved Marty Stauffer's Wild America when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I loved every nature documentary I ever watched. And it, like, almost has to be that at some point there was a Marty Stauffer episode or some nature documentary episode about Montana that caught my attention, and that became a thing. So I really don't know where it came from. It was just kind of always there for me.
One of those things that you wanted from a young age, so you went and got it.
Yeah, I suppose. I wasn't thinking of that as an example, but yes, manifesting something out of sheer force of will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it worked out for you.
It in amazing ways.
So what got you there was you are now a fish biologist. Are you allowed to say what your official title is? Are we doing that?
I don't know. What yes. Yeah, I work for New Mexico Department of Game and Fish, and I am the assistant chief of fisheries for research and management.
And before that, you worked in Yellowstone for 10, 12 years.
Yeah, I worked about a decade in Yellowstone before I moved. I've been in New Mexico since 2014, and then I was in Montana for about 10 years total between some seasonal work and then a long stint there from 2005 until I moved to New Mexico.
And your love of biology, what got you started down that road? We talked about it. You talked about it in one of the past episodes with Kaylee about some stuff in FFA, but in your high school career, I know there were some important teachers to you who helped guide you down this path. Do you think you were always headed into the science field, into biology? Was that something you saw yourself even early in your childhood, middle school years that I really like science? Or is that just something that came up after you started doing those CDEs and got into the aquatics and said, hey, I really like this?
Yeah. So you're talking about the FFA, I think, and probably what's the previous episode to this when I talked to Kaylee about FFA and a career fair that helped really get me on the path. But I think that I always loved science. Science was always my favorite topic in school. And part of that was that I really disliked and wasn't all that good at math. So for some reason, I thought, go into science because there's not really a lot of math in science.
Didn't you hit chem?
I could tell you all the ways I was wrong about that, but and then one thing outside of school that really has always stood out to me, particularly with fish and native fish, is I think we talked about Poplar Run, which is a little creek on the Lancaster County line, close to home in Quentin in Pennsylvania there. And that was a place Pop Grant took us to specifically to fish for native brook trout. And I remember the first time he took us there, and I remember the first brook trout I caught there, and just really, maybe it was the first time that it clicked for me that this was something special. That this was not a stocked rainbow trout. This was a native fish connected to this place for eons, and just kind of a world apart in my mind somehow. And I would say that was probably in middle school. And then, you mentioned teachers. We were blessed at Cedar Crest, where we went to high school, with a really great biology teacher that not all of us were fortunate enough to have, but Mr. Stover, Jerry Stover, was there. And I think I took biology in 10th grade from him. And he was a big hunter and fisherman. And he did cool stuff. Like, I think maybe we even took a deer heart in one time from a deer that we had shot, and he did a dissection of a deer heart. I think we did some fish dissections from bluegills that he asked us to bring in for him. And so I would say that he really kicked it into high gear for me in terms of like thinking about, this is something that I want to do, like to be in biology. And then FFA really helped me to understand some of those career paths, including the one that I took.
Yeah. And I would also probably say Mr. Stover was quite an outdoorsman himself. So it probably helped getting to see someone who you respected, who also enjoyed doing the things you like to do in a field that you had interest in.
Yeah, absolutely. He really kind of took me under his wing, and like you're saying, I really respected him. I really could connect with him from the standpoint of like, we could hold a conversation. He would talk to me about hunting and fishing like I was a peer, not like student to teacher. Mm-hmm. And he is a fantastic person and became a friend. And I think we talked about him in the muzzleloader episode. He really helped me and helped all of us get into flintlock muzzleloader hunting. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and then Harold Burkheiser, our FFA advisor, is definitely another person in high school that stands out as somebody that, I really appreciate his efforts. Being an ag teacher and being a really good FFA advisor takes a ton of work, and he put a ton of work into it. And that work is really what helped, get me to that job fair where I found my way.
Yeah. Berkey was a great ag teacher and a great ag advisor.
Yep.
And you do, I do worry. It's a dying breed of those types of people, but it takes a lot of time and energy to build a career like he had and to guide as many kids as he did. I'm forever grateful for what Harold Burkheiser did for me as well.
Yeah.
So
great guy.
Very great guy. The on a side, I was always in high school, whenever I'd come up and I'd meet my teachers for the first time, and they'd say, "Oh, you're Mike Rule's brother." And I was always like, I loved him so much. And I was always, well, prepared to be disappointed.
I'm sure that's not true.
You set a standard with teachers, that cheesecakes, bringing in cheesecakes and good grades.
Yeah, sorry.
Hard act to follow. Well, you and Kate.
I feel like Kate should get some of that blame. She was a much better student than I was.
Well, the thing was that she was in honors classes, Mike, and I wasn't. So
no, I see.
There wasn't much intersect between the teachers I had and the teachers she had. So once you went to that job fair and realized, hey, fisheries is a path you're ready to head down, you're excited to head down. Was it Mansfield right from the drop? Were there other schools?
Yeah, no, there were definitely other schools. I looked at Montana State really hard. Again, I wanted to be in Montana. And I looked at Penn State really hard. And a couple of things really guided me towards Mansfield. I mean, one, I didn't relish the idea of being on a huge campus. Montana State obviously was very far away from home and very expensive being an out-of-state school. I think it's real likely at Penn State that I would have had to start at a branch campus and then go to main campus, and I didn't really like that idea either. And then Mansfield really stands out among fisheries schools in some ways. For its size, it offers more coursework in fisheries than almost any school out there. Like, there are more, at least there were when I was going there were more direct fisheries related courses at Mansfield than there were at Penn State. So it was in an area, a part of Pennsylvania, north central Pennsylvania, that I absolutely was already in love with. It was a small campus, which made me feel more comfortable, and it really had a great fisheries program. And at the time, that was led by Dr. Richard Soderberg, and Dr. Soderberg, or Doc, as we affectionately call him, really put that program together and really built up a reputation. Almost everywhere I go, I run into Mansfield graduates, and Doc is a really, really great instructor, and also another person who became a friend after I left Mansfield, and that I'm really grateful to have. But yeah, it was somewhat a matter of convenience going to Mansfield and a financial decision, but it was really a decision that I was fortunate to make, and an opportunity I was fortunate to have.
It's nice enough. It's far enough away from home that you're not running home for an hour and then coming back, but it's close enough that if something would happen, you were able to get home pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And during that time, I mean, not all that long before I went to college, Pop Grant passed away. And then between my freshman and sophomore year, Pop Bud passed away. And our mom, I don't think we've ever talked about this, but our mom's a breast cancer survivor. And her diagnosis really came right on the heels of Pop Bud's passing. And so there was really a lot going on with the family at that time. And it would have been really hard to be across the country. As much as I wanted to go to Montana State, and I'm sure I would have had a great experience there, that it would have been a really hard time to be that far away.
Yeah, I can imagine so. So other than, the obvious, your college degree, what were your takeaways from college? What impact did it have on you?
Yeah. I I think the most important thing that I learned in undergrad was that I finally, somewhere between my junior and senior year, I finally learned how to learn. I got into some courses that were challenging enough and some professors that were tough enough that I couldn't just kind of fake it and get a B. And so it taught me a little bit about knowing when I needed to buckle down and work harder. It also, I mean, it really taught me some stuff about people and not judging a book by its cover sort of thing. I mean, I went to school with some guys who are dear friends and that I love dearly. But if you met them at a gas station, you might walk away not thinking that they were all that bright, and they are some of the smartest people that I know. And then conversely, there are some people out there that are really, really, really academically gifted, but not hardworking enough to turn it into results. So I think college taught me some things about myself and how I learn, and it also taught me a lot about life and motivation and how important execution is, right? Like it's not enough just to be smart. I mean, you got to be willing to work hard enough to translate it into something meaningful.
Were you a good high school student? Were you? I mean, I know, I've growing up, like it's always like Mike and Kate are the smart ones. You know what I mean? And not that Matt's not smart either, but like was it? I don't know if I ever knew. Like, was high school hard for you? Did you ever struggle? No.
Only in math. Only once I got in higher level math stuff. I was kind of the master of the B. I could get a B in virtually anything with really little effort.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of the attitude that I came out of high school and started college with. And that was the thing that I really had to change later in my college career because I took a microbiology course with a notoriously difficult professor, and I got a D in that class. And I never got anything lower than a B in high school. And anything lower than a B was pretty rare in college, but I got into that course and I couldn't cut it with the amount of effort that I thought I was capable of,
mm-hmm.
or that I was willing to put forward at that time. And that really taught me something.
Wake up call.
Yeah. And it was, I mean, thank goodness. I mean, that,
right.
that was really, really valuable.
So I don't know if we ever talked about this before, but you really love Hemingway.
Mm-hmm.
Is he still your favorite author?
Yeah. Yes.
When did that? Oh, go ahead.
No. He's definitely like I think more of his writing, or that his writing was more impactful. Maybe for me personally, but certainly for, American literature than anybody else in the near modern era.
So when did that start? Was that in college? Was that in high school?
Yeah, it was late. It was late in college. I wasn't like a big reader. Again, I put in minimal effort. And then sometime later in high school, later in college, I just thought, I really ought to start reading. And of course, I always consumed a lot of outdoor writing stuff, Outdoor Life and Field and Stream magazine kind of stuff. But I picked up The Green Hills of Africa because it was a Hemingway book ostensibly about hunting. And that was just kind of the beginning of it. I read that, and then I pretty much just read my way through his whole bibliography.
Yeah.
Yeah. I probably read For Whom the Bell Tolls pretty early in that, and that book is really what made me fall in love with his writing. If you ask me what's the greatest American novel of the 20th century, I would say it's For Whom the Bell Tolls. I think it's his best piece of work. It's the most interesting one. There's some others that are more critically acclaimed, but I don't think there's any that are better. But what do I know? I mean, I'm a fish biologist, not a lit major. So
not a lit major. Yeah. Were there other than once you started reading? Were there other works that just drew you in? Were there other authors that you couldn't then put down?
Oh yeah, lots of them. Both. I do tend to prefer fiction over nonfiction, and so
myself as well.
I would say, Steinbeck for me. I mean, I read The Grapes of Wrath early on and really loved that book. And then I also started reading some conservation writing. I took an environmental ethics course in college where we read some conservation writing type stuff. And it's really hard to talk about conservation writing without talking about Aldo Leopold and the Sand County Almanac. But then a little later, particularly after I got into the West, Wallace Stegner is a Western American author who really wrote some beautiful novels, like Angle of Repose. I think is in probably my top 10 all-time favorite novels, fiction works. And then he wrote a lot of Western land ethic, arid land ethic works, particularly his essays. There's a really good compilation of his essays. I think it's called Marking the Sparrow's Fall. And so I don't know. I did tend to sort of get on one or two authors at a time and then, read my way through all or most of their works. I mean, I read quite a bit of Faulkner too, but Faulkner, I don't think I'm smart enough to understand it. So I don't know, but I really do like reading. And then, I've been so fortunate in my life, with running into people through the years. And I worked with this guy in Yellowstone. His name's Ben Goldfarb. Ben now has two really well-reviewed New York Times bestseller type books, nonfiction conservation writing works. One is called Eager, and it's I forget the subtitle. It's about beavers, all about beavers and beaver ecology and the social aspects of beavers. And the more recent one that he's just got a ton of awards for is called Crossings, and it's about road ecology. And it's just a really interesting work, all about both sort of the biological and the social aspects of roads and fish and wildlife. And so that's been really cool. I've met a handful of people over the years like Ben who do conservation writing stuff. And so I probably do as much reading in that realm now as anything else. But as you probably know, the kids have slowed my recreational reading down quite a bit, just from a time standpoint.
Noise, distraction, all those things.
Good, in all in a good way, but yeah,
for sure.
I definitely don't have as much time to get lost in a Hemingway novel as I did when I was in graduate school.
I think back, I always was, in a way, in my younger years, and I read a lot more now than I ever have, but jealous of Kate, because she was always she was always reading, always, when we were kids. Mom as well. And I don't know if you remember, but I'm sure you do. Pop Grant just read like nobody that I know of. Anytime we went to camp, as a kid, I remember him sitting in a chair, in a fold-out lawn chair, whether we were Ole Bowl or just in front of the cabin or wherever, and he had a book in his hand.
I think that probably the reason that I picked up the Green Hills of Africa and started reading was because of him. I think I knew how well read he was, both from seeing him read and talking to him about books, and having other people tell me how well read he was. I think, after we lost him and I got later in college, I really think it occurred to me like that was an important part of his life and probably something that I should take up. He inspired me in that way. And he also, in his engagement and depth of knowledge about current events, he read the newspaper every day. He knew what was going on in the world. And he really thought that was an important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, while I don't read recreationally as much as I used to, I still feel that like I really try hard to keep up with current events and know what's going on in the world.
So do you have a favorite Hemingway short story? Is Green Hills of Africa considered a short story? I'm not sure. No,
it's a kind of a short novel, but it's a novel. Probably The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber, which is it's another African hunting story.
That's one of my favorite too.
Yeah, that's just a good story. And again, it's one of those, like, you can, just like the Green Hills of Africa, it's ostensibly about hunting, but it's not really about hunting. It's about the human condition, and it's about life. And The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber is the same way, mostly allegory.
So you graduated from Mansfield, and you end up working in Yellowstone, correct?
Yeah, we were required to do an internship to graduate from Mansfield. So I had some friends. One of them was Becky Dunlap, who got into an AmeriCorps government volunteer program called Student Conservation Association, or SCA. And she went out to Yellowstone, and Matt and Dan Kreider and I actually went out and visited her that summer. I think that must have been between my sophomore and junior years. And then, in order to complete the internship that I needed, I did the same program through SCA as Becky had done. And I got really fortunate, again, just a place where I feel like life handed me something amazing. Most of those internships were based at Yellowstone Lake and really heavily focused on lake trout work. But I just somehow landed in this one that was working with a graduate student from Montana State University. So Yellowstone hired me, and it was a Yellowstone SCA internship. But I lived in Bozeman and worked with this graduate student. And for a whole summer, all we did was tag and track West Slope cutthroat trout, which are one of the two native cutthroat trout in Yellowstone, up and down Fan Creek. So it was like entirely backcountry work. I got to live in Bozeman, Montana, and boy, I'm one of those people now that walks around every time I go to Bozeman saying, this place has changed, because it really has. I mean, I lived in a place now that no student could ever afford to live, but and so I got a little bit of exposure to kind of like the grad school thing there, and got a chance to meet with some professors at Montana State, and then ended up just running around the backcountry all summer, which I loved. And there were things about that project that didn't. Probably the most fortunate part of it was that there were things about that project and the student that didn't go well. And I ended up really being kind of a liaison between the leadership and fisheries in the park and the folks at Montana State, because the folks in the park didn't feel like they knew what was going on. And and that actually helped me achieve a level of recognition in Yellowstone that maybe I wouldn't have otherwise gotten had I fallen into a different role. But it was an amazing summer of being in the backcountry in Yellowstone, and I got to fly around in a helicopter a little bit right when I got there, and got to do some horseback work, and just got a little bit of all the best parts of being in the fisheries field.
And how that then end up coming back to Kentucky, to Western Kentucky?
Yeah, what happened there was so that was between my junior and senior year at Mansfield. I did that internship. I came back. Obviously, I finished college on time. And then soon as college was over, basically the day after I graduated, I left and went back to Yellowstone into a paid seasonal role. There's a lot of seasonal positions in the fish and wildlife biology field.
Gotcha.
You know, organizations hire lots of technicians in the summer to go out and do field work. So I went back for that. And then I actually came home for a real brief period. And then my boss from Yellowstone, Todd Kuhl, called me up and said, "Hey, we just got money to do water quality sampling in the winter." They were looking for chemicals from snowmobile exhaust in snow melt. And so he said, you want to come back and work this winter and collect water quality samples? So I said, sure. And I went back and worked with another guy who's a good friend, Jeff Arnold. He was the water quality guy there at the park at the time. And I basically snowmobiled all over Yellowstone for a winter collecting water quality samples. It was weird and wild and cold and fun and miserable.
This is one of my favorite things to tell people about you, Mike, is that you had a job where you got to go and snowmobile all over Yellowstone Park, and you absolutely hated snowmobiles. And everybody I know is like, what is he? I mean, would kill for that opportunity.
Yeah, no, I get it, but it's it's one of those things. There's a lot of things about my professional life I feel like that have been this way, where it's kind of like, it really sounds good on the surface, and the first time or two you do it, you're like, this is amazing. I can't believe how great this is. And then around the 10th time, you're like, okay, maybe I should have reconsidered this. But no, I mean, Yellowstone's huge. And if you leave Mammoth way up at the north entrance and, basically have to go all the way to the south entrance, stopping to take water quality samples, turn around and go back to Lake for the night. And, you leave at 5:00 in the morning when it's dark and 25 below, and you get done when it's dark and 25 below, and everything's frozen all the time. Yeah, it's a real job. And, boy, at the time, that was the last year actually of kind of the wide open, unguided snowmobiling. I don't know what's gone on with that lately, but there was a whole controversy around that. And that was part of the reason we were doing the sampling. But boy, I saw some absolutely wild stuff, like people freaking out because there were bison running down the road at them and driving their snowmobiles off the road and getting them stuck and trying to climb trees to avoid the bison that had no interest whatsoever in them. And just, I don't know, some really wild things, and tried to sample some places too that were like, I remember one time we tried to sample Pelican Creek, and I had a hand ice auger with an extension on it. And I ended up laying on the ice, and we never hit the water. Like the ice was so thick that, I don't know, 4+ feet of ice, and then you're all sweated up from exerting all that effort trying to dig that hole. And then you got to get back on your snowmobile and ride another 100 miles.
Yeah. Sounds awful.
I mean, I know.
Seeing all that wildlife, riding across Yellowstone on a snowmobile, getting paid to do it. I don't know how you did it.
I know.
You're a trooper.
Life has been hard.
So okay, so you didn't start back in Kentucky at Western Kentucky until the following year then?
Yeah,
so you were a year out of school? No,
I got distracted.
I don't think I knew this. I thought you went right from. I thought you did a summer internship and then went out of or summer job, a temp job, and then went back to Kentucky.
No, I went back to Yellowstone. I think I was back in Yellowstone from like December, and then in the spring I was working to get into graduate school. I was going to go to Montana State. I had a dream to go to Montana State. I had a few connections there. There was a new professor there at the time who I thought I was going to get in with. I was told anyway I was a leading candidate for 2 different projects. I ultimately didn't get either one of them. And this opportunity came up at Western Kentucky. These things get posted. There's job boards and stuff. And, I didn't have a dream to go to Western Kentucky, not a well-known fisheries school. But the things that really drew me in it was working in Mammoth Cave National Park. So it was in a national park, and it was looking for trout. It was actually looking for trout in caves. And so it was kind of like a trout-focused project in a national park. And I applied for it, and ultimately I got offered, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I'll never forget, I went and talked to Todd Kuhl, my boss there in Yellowstone. And, I kind of laid this out for him, and that, I wasn't sure what I should do. And he just looked at me and he said, "Mike, go to school. Go get your degree." And at the time, especially, to become a fish biologist at most agencies, and particularly somewhere like in Yellowstone, you really had to have that master's degree. And, again, such a fortunate thing to have Todd in my life and have him as a professional mentor and a friend, because it was the perfect piece of advice at the perfect time in my life. And so I did. I left Yellowstone in May of 2003, went to Western Kentucky, spent exactly 2 years there, got the master's degree, and then immediately left Western Kentucky and went back to Yellowstone.
And I mean, once you got back to Yellowstone, that's when you got a full-time job out there. You were out there for a spell then, right?
Yeah. Yep. I was in Yellowstone until 2014. So more or less 9 years. So that's why I always say like a decade when you add in the seasonal time and internship time. I had more than 10 years there. But, I should say about Western Kentucky too, I loved it there. It was a phenomenal experience. I'd spent 2 summers trying to find trout in caves, which is weird. And it didn't leave me with any particular love of caves. But
you don't go spelunking on the weekends?
No, God, no. Caves, I mean, I hope nobody's listening to this that loves caves, but caves are cold, dark holes full of rocks and mud. I mean, the parts of Mammoth Cave that they take you to on the normal cave tours, those are the really good parts. There's so much of those cave systems that are just tunnels through rocks and mud. It's one of those things that, the perspective of familiarity kind of makes it easy to underappreciate, but it was amazing. We never found any trout, which made writing my thesis very easy, but
was it just there are no trout in caves?
Pretty much. No, I wrote a whole thing about surface water fish and caves and how they end up in there and maybe why they're there sometimes. But it was fun, and it was really interesting. And I made amazing friends that are close friends to this day, Jared Stadinsky and his wife, Holly Henderson, just phenomenal people that I love to death. And I had a really great advisor there at Western. Phil Linish is his name. He's actually big. He moved to somewhere on the Delmarva Peninsula recently, retired and moved down there. Loves to fish the same places that you guys do, both on the Lewis side and on the Cape Charles side.
Oh, nice.
Kentucky is Western Kentucky, I think especially, is a really nice place to spend some time. I really liked it there.
Yeah, you had that hunting lease down there, and I think all of us at some point were down there hunting with you, which was nice.
Yeah, I was like the only person. Nice. I was like the only one that never shot at a deer there.
Is that true? But, yeah, not even a doe?
No, I never even shot at a deer on that place. I leased it, and everybody else killed my deer.
Yeah.
No,
I like that. You should do that again.
Yeah, right. It and that is, I mean, one of the things I've been fortunate about, and I appreciate, is that, being in Western Kentucky, there's very little public land. And so, like you said, I got lucky. I found 100 acres that was all pretty thick woods to lease. So it was big enough. There were deer and turkeys on it. But it taught me the value of public land and just how important it is to have those opportunities, because they're really limited from a hunting standpoint in that part of Kentucky around Bowling Green. But the flip side of that is I think Western Kentucky is prettier in the spring during spring turkey season. It's prettier there than anywhere else I've ever been. Just an amazing place to be in the woods at that time of year.
It is. Growing up, I mean, we are blessed, and we can complain about it, but the public hunting in Pennsylvania is pretty outstanding. I mean, we have quite a bit of public hunting, so it is interesting when you go somewhere else that doesn't have those opportunities. You realize how blessed you truly are to live in a place where, yeah, you're going to get pressure. Yeah, you're going to see other people when you go out, but at least you can go out,
Yeah, and if you went to Western Kentucky now, I suspect that there's absolutely no way that you could lease 100 acres on what I was making when I was in grad school. I think I was paying $500 a year for that place, and I hate to imagine now what that would cost.
Yeah, not affordable for grad students. So you left Kentucky and you went back to Montana for a spell. As you said before, you were there like 9-ish years working there full time, and then to New Mexico.
Yeah, I mean, I spent 9 years there doing just all kinds of crazy and amazing things, mostly focused on restoration for Yellowstone cutthroat trout, West Slope cutthroat trout, and fluvial river dwelling Arctic grayling. Did big native fish restoration projects and packed horses and mules all over the place, and built fish barriers in the backcountry to try to keep non-native fish from getting back into areas where we were restoring native fish, and just crazy stuff that I'm so glad I got the chance to do, and so glad that I don't have to do again.
That'd be hard leaving, though. Knowing how much you wanted to live in Montana and how much you loved it.
It was so hard to leave. I mean, Yellowstone is such an easy place to love, and more than the work, I love the people there. I mentioned Todd Cool, who was my boss there. He's just a dear friend, crazy elk hunter, the craziest elk hunter I've ever met. And, we could do a whole podcast episode about Todd, and hopefully we can get him on sometime. But, and the hunting stories, and then we had not a big circle of friends, but a tight circle of friends, many of whom we're still close with in Montana. And yeah, it was a place I had always dreamed about being, and a group of people that I really loved. And it was hard to go, but it was a good decision. I had professionally in Yellowstone, I think I had gotten as far as I was going to get for a long time, and I wanted more opportunity to manage people and lead, and that just wasn't going to happen there. And so I had to go. It was the right time to do it.
Yeah. A business decision, as it were.
Yeah.
I know that you went from a state where you could hunt every day of a season for 8 weeks? Longer than that?
Well, yeah, I mean, 10 weeks between archery and rifle season. As a Montana resident, you could buy an elk and a deer tag, a buck tag over the counter and hunt 5 weeks of archery and 5 weeks of rifle.
Was that one of the harder changes that you had to go through, going to a draw state and then hunt windows?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that definitely that was a big change. And I would say like New Mexico, because almost all the big game hunting in New Mexico is by draw. From an elk standpoint, we've been way more successful elk hunting in New Mexico because even though it can be hard to get tags, when you get them, generally the quality of the hunting is really good. Mm-hmm. For deer, there's a lot of deer in Montana. And so because there's both whitetails and mule deer, but because there's a lot of deer and you could get a license every year, that was definitely I would say a better situation for deer hunting from my standpoint. I mean, there's great deer hunting in New Mexico too, particularly if you can get tags in the right units. And there's some absolute giant mule deer in New Mexico. And we've really enjoyed the deer hunting in New Mexico because, Caitlin's drawn a couple tags out on the Eastern Plains and hunted eastern whitetails on the Texas border. We've had some Coues deer tags, and I was fortunate enough to harvest one Coues deer buck and have some other opportunities, and then mule deer hunting as well. So in some ways, New Mexico is really, really cool for deer hunting, but it was a big change moving from kind of that over-the-counter model of Montana to New Mexico where it's all draw.
Mm-hmm.
But then you do balance that a little bit with like really good dove hunting starting in September, especially in southern New Mexico, and then a long quail season from mid-November till mid-February, and some other interesting opportunities, and surprisingly good waterfowl hunting too. So, I mean, New Mexico is a pretty awesome place to live from an outdoor recreation standpoint.
Yeah. And you have the exotics as well.
Yeah, that is true. I've really enjoyed the opportunity to hunt oryx, which are, an African plains game species, and then Barbary sheep, which are native to the Barbary coast of North Africa, more commonly called aoudad in Texas or other places. And even Caitlin had a couple of tags for ibex. I think they're Persian ibex that were introduced on the one mountain range in New Mexico. So yeah, there's some really interesting, unique hunting opportunities in New Mexico that we've been fortunate to take advantage of.
I will say I think that oryx is probably my favorite wild game to eat of anything I've eaten so far.
They are very, very good to eat and very fun to hunt, and an amazingly hardy animal.
Yeah, very tough.
They are tough as nails.
So now you guys have been in New Mexico 10 years, I believe you said, somewhere right around there.
More than 11 now.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you've really made it your home. I know Tim and Denise have moved down there to be with you, be closer to you guys, even though Tim, I believe, had said at one point he'd never move for his kids. Isn't that something he said?
I don't know that I recall that, but I believe it.
I feel like I remember you telling me that, but I could be on on that one.
That sounds right. So. Yeah, no, it's been, Robert came along about whatever halfway through that time. And then I guess when Emmett was on the way, Tim and Denise moved down, and we've been blessed by that because it gives us some family close by that we get to see all the time, and tons of help with the kids, which, can't say how much we appreciate, but it's, I think it's really great for the boys to have that family close by.
I think, and this is kind of where I'm going with this. They're pretty close as the crow flies. Are about a mile, right? Now it's a little bit more of a drive than that.
Yeah, we're on what's called an arroyo, what we call an arroyo in New Mexico, which is essentially a creek bed that's dry 99% of the time, unless there's a big storm. And if you drop into the arroyo behind our house and walk a mile up it, you're in their backyard.
Growing up, and people who know me, we live on the same property as my in-laws. They have their own full living quarters in our house. We share a house. And growing up, though, like, if you were, Pop Bud was in our backyard. We were always surrounded by family. Uncle Run was literally across our driveway from us. And I think that it's interesting that you kind of have a similar situation where you can fall back on your in-laws like we do, and how good it is for our kids to have that close connection. I wouldn't have traded anything as a kid being able to go right across my backyard and spend time with Pop Bud.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. We saw grandparents almost on a daily basis, and my boys see grandparents almost on a daily basis. And, I know we don't get to see our parents. They don't get to see our parents as much as we wish they did, but, we stay connected as best we can through FaceTime and visits. But yeah, that daily contact with family, I think, is just so valuable and so important, and kind of like, same way that we did, we go on weekend fishing trips together. We spend a lot of time, with Tim and Denise. The boys spend a lot of time, both just day-to-day stuff and in the outdoors with their grandparents. And that's really special and really valuable.
I think there's, it was important to us. There were a lot of lessons we were taught by our grandparents, specifically our grandfathers, that didn't come from our parents, and no insult to our parents in any way. It's just, you have to learn, I think it's important for kids to get lessons from other people than just the parents. And I think it's really important having a close knit relationship with their grandparents.
Yeah. Well, there's a freedom to have a slightly different kind of relationship. Yeah. And that's important.
So your career has afforded you some pretty cool opportunities. I know you got to sit down with Rinella a couple times. What was that like?
Great. Yeah. Yeah. I've had a couple brushes with Meat Eater and Steve Rinella. And those have really been fun. I've found him to be very, very genuine. I think kind of who you see on screen with him is who he is in real life. And I got lucky. I made friends with a professional connection with a Forest Service wildlife ecologist, Carl Malcolm, and Carl and Steve have a friendship that goes way back. And then through Carl as a mutual friend, I got connected there, and I shamelessly name dropped Carl in an email to the General Meat Eater account with a suggestion for a podcast episode. And lo and behold, Giannis Putelis reached back out to me. That was a day that stands out in my life, getting that email from Yanni. And ended up getting an invite to come on the podcast and talk with them about kind of the wildlife conservation funding model. Probably really boring and really wonkish stuff, but something I'm really passionate about. And then from there, actually got to go on. Steve drew an Oryx tag and an Ibex tag, a nanny Ibex tag in the span of about a year, and I got to tag along on both of those hunts and be on a couple other podcasts. And I don't know how much cooler could it be than getting to be on the Meat Eater podcast.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think it's a opportunity most outdoorsmen would relish to have.
Yeah, holy moly, how lucky can you be? And it was kind of inspirational in this, what we're doing right now. He, like I said, Steve really is a genuine guy, and we go on the podcast, it's just a couple of dudes sitting around BSing about something. It's never felt like some big production, and maybe it's changed. I think the first one that I was on was like episode 79, which was pretty early. I don't know, they're in the hundreds and hundreds of episodes now. But yeah, it was in Steve's garage. It was a couple of guys with headsets talking about this conservation funding model thing. So it's like, oh, that's not that complicated.
No, and also somewhat gives you hope for maybe what this could be one day. We're sitting in basements and garages and hotel rooms and
right. Yeah, I don't think we'll ever be Meat Eater, but we have dozens and dozens of listeners. So some of them are still listening. So I suppose we're doing something right. And, and it's just fun. I think it's been so enjoyable to the last couple episodes, you interviewing Sim and Dick, and then hearing from the kids. And CJ's piece was great in that episode. And I think about, there'll be a time when Robert can listen to that segment that him and Poppy recorded and really recall a fond memory. Right. Absolutely. And what else could you ask for? And I kind of, again, from the Meat Eater thing, I kind of took that as inspiration. Like, man, my kids are going to get to go back and listen to an episode of Meat Eater that I'm on talking with Steve Rinella about the oryx that he harvested, Mm-hmm. And one of the, not in that hunt, obviously the fact that it was a hunt with Steve Rinella makes it, memorable, but it was the hottest big game hunt of my life. It was a June off-range oryx hunt in southern New Mexico. It was 106, 108 degrees in the middle of the day, and we were out there. I think we killed the oryx on day 5. We're out there grinding it out, and it is every bit as hard. I learned in that hunt, it is every bit as hard for me to hunt when it's extremely hot as it is when it's extremely cold.
Yeah. So different kind of hard, but I'm sure.
Yeah.
Hard and the same.
But hard in the same way that hunting, when it becomes a mental game to stick it out and keep doing it, hard in that same way.
Yeah.
But yeah, at some point, my boys might listen to that and think, wow, that was an amazing thing my dad got to do. And I'm glad I have that memory, and, it inspires me to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. We've always said at very least we'll have our grandkids will have something to listen to.
Right.
And what we would give to have the stories we grew up with in a format that we could listen to them.
Oh man.
And we were blessed in that Jane found that audio and we were able to get some of those stories back, but there are just hundreds of stories I can recall that I wish I could hear again.
Right. For sure.
Well, I think that's all I have, Mike. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
No, I appreciate you doing this. We started out with kind of what the first 45 years have taught me. And I guess I think about, as I've honed in on who I am and what I want out of my life, I keep coming back to two things. It's relationships and experiences, and the interplay between the two, and the family relationships with you and Mark and Matt and mom and dad and Caitlin and my boys, and CJ and Rachel and, the whole extended family, and those relationships connected to the outdoor experiences are just the most important thing to me. And I think about that. And like I said at the beginning, I think sometimes it's really easy to get lost in the daily grind and all the myriad stresses in life. But it's just hard for me not to think about time. Anything could happen to any of us at any point, right? And I could wake up tomorrow and something could happen and we could be poor. Who knows? Maybe one of these times every other year when I buy a lottery ticket, we'll, hit the lottery and one day wake up rich. Probably not, but but it doesn't matter in the sense that you can't buy more time. Time is the one thing you can't buy more of. You might wake up rich or you might wake up poor tomorrow, but you will not wake up with more days to live than you had the day before. And to have the opportunity to use as much of that time as possible to spend with family and friends, having outdoor experiences is just the thing that I have decided, is really meaningful in my life. And so I appreciate you, Mark, and the relationship that we've always had and the relationship that I think has grown even stronger through this. And, I appreciate Caitlin and all the things that she gives me and the rest of our family and the rest of our close friends and everybody else that afford me this just amazing opportunity to have this life where we're building experiences and, now recording some of them with the podcast. It's a blessing kind of beyond measure. So I don't know. That's what 45 years has taught me.
Well said. I think that should wrap it up. Love you, brother.
All right. I love you too, man.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
Hunting and fishing, the great outdoors, mixing history, laughter, love, and folklore, creating memories with family and friends. These are the trophies that matter in the end. Outdoor roots.